I recently had the opportunity to speak with an area woman who claims she has been stalked by a shadow man entity for most of her life. I first became aware of her story 9 years ago and wrote about it. For her privacy, I'm not revealing her name. I started our conversation by asking her where and when this all began.
I'm trying to remember the year. It was like 86 or 87. I was into trying to learn about witchcraft and all this other stuff. So what had happened is I went and bought the Satanic Bible, and that's satanic rituals and I think practices. I'm not quite sure what that one was called. I can't remember now. What I did is I wanted a familiar, not just, not like a black cat or a dog or something like that. I actually wanted a real spirit familiar. What I ended up with was a demon.
Could you actually see him?
I have seen him, yes.
And this demon followed you?
It followed me around, but it was more like it more protected. I was 13 then, so it more protected my room from my mom coming through and nosing through, and on countless times that she went and threw those two books away. And when I come home from school, they'd be back on my desk. She remembers that quite well. It went dormant for a while. I would say for quite a while. After I moved out when I was 16. And what I did is after my father passed away in 2001, my mother came to me. She goes, "Whatever you left behind, you need to get the hell out of my house," were her exact words. Went back to my mom's house, and what do you know? Which at that time I did not realize that when you conjure something up, you should probably know more about it. Like I said, I was an idiot kid. And I told him at that time, "You need to leave my mother's house. If you want to come with me, you can, but you do not have to. You can go about you can't stay here."
So, what happened was, when you left home, this entity remained in your mother's house?
Yes, sure, he did.
So your mother saw it and was aware of it?
She saw it. She got scratched by it. One of the noises that she constantly complained about, it was, in the basement we had basketball, stuff like that, outdoor plays in spring and summer. She constantly heard a basketball bouncing up and down, up and down. It was my sister, the whole family would hear it. And then you hear doors slamming downstairs. It's like a family room down there. She's seen it. When a lot of people see it, it's like a big black mass. That's the only way I can really describe it,
So you can't even see through it?
No, no, absolutely not.
It's in the shape of a person?
Yes, it is.
So you move out, get your own place, then what happens?
Apparently he followed. And instead of me thinking this was a bad thing, I thought it was a good thing. I'm like, wonderful. From when I was a child up until now, I can see, and hear things that some people can't. And sometimes he would block that out. I wouldn't have to hear those things that, people coming at me at night. Well, my two older sons, have gotten that type of gift. And so instead of bothering me, he went on to my oldest. And when my oldest didn't want him, he bumped down to my youngest, my second oldest, and had him for quite a while.
So you and your husband lived near Fricano's?
It was 1430 Fulton, yep. It was, I guess that was an old Eagle Ottawa house, they called it.
And the activity escalated once you took residence there?
Oh, did it ever, yes. There was also two other people that really made themselves known, and there were a couple other things, but I think we get a lot of walkthroughs. I know that sounds odd, I know, but things will kind of people, I should say, kind of come, and then they go. I know that sounds so weird, but we start calling it as walkthroughs. They're not residents there.
You told me about some of these entities previously. Could you describe them for the listeners?
Well, what I could dig up, what little I could dig up, there was a gentleman in the basement, but it used to be a coal room. And at that time, the guys would play cards down there. Some individual got shot over a card game. I didn't know this. I was told this by the landlord, because that's what we were renting. That got told to him by a couple of, stories go like that. And the more I went downstairs to do laundry and everyday stuff, I definitely got a flash or two. And there were some things that were off, but pretty much I think that was the main story. Obviously, I can't prove that, but he was mean, very mean. The scratching, he'd pound at night. turned the lights on and off. He mainly stayed downstairs, and the gal upstairs, on the main floor, I should say, sorry. All I know is that she was electrocuted, and if I'm not mistaken, she did it herself, which is a horrible way to go. She would talk in your ear. She did to all of us, not just myself or my son. She did to my husband. She scared the dogs. She was weird. It was almost like she was crazy, if that makes sense. And then there was a poor 15-year-old guy in my daughter's closet. That used to be his room. Harold. I remember his name, Harold. I just can't remember the last name offhand anymore. But that's the only one that I could actually prove and look at. You know, there was he committed suicide.
I recall you once telling me that he was a young Catholic, and the entity was ashamed of himself.
When you're Catholics, from what I've been told, I guess suicide is not looked on proudly, you know. And I believe that after he did it, I think he's afraid to cross over it, so to say, because Catholics believe that's a hell-worthy trespass. And so the last I knew, he was, I mean, like I said, that was years ago, but he was there. He was the only one that was not a bothersome, so to say.
The shadow man that followed you to the Fulton Street house, did it interact with your children?
I don't know if he interacted, but I know he kept them away to the point where at least my son wasn't being touched or scratched anymore. It was almost like he shielded them from that. It seemed to be like he was. It almost like, okay, everybody had their place, and he kept them in their place, if that makes sense.
How did things escalate to the point where you wanted to leave this home?
I'm not honestly quite sure. I wish I knew. I know I had, I think maybe it's because I did have, at the time, I had a minister come in and try to bless the home. And that was, and then about a week later, that's when things really, you know, everything was out of control. Things that were just downstairs are now coming up. You could see the weird gal that was normally on the main floor. You could see her downstairs now. They're all moving all over the place, and it just was not safe anymore.
So the pastor's presence only agitated things?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, he did.
Did the pastor know what he was doing?
Well, I thought he did. And like I said, I was young then, and I was trying to really ignore what I could do and what I could see. I was trying to appease the thing. I was just trying to make stuff, just, I do this, and he'll be quiet, leave everybody alone. He did not go room to room. He pretty much stayed on the main floor. And, this blessing is good for the whole house. I think he was frightened. I really do. I think it scared him.
Without naming the pastor, what church was he affiliated with?
Yes, he came from Spring Lake, Westland, before what it is now. And it took me about a month to get someone to come out. I was begging for anybody to come out at that point. And that was a church my mother went to that I had gone a couple of times. They told me I was depressed first, and then they told me I needed psychiatric help, and then they told me all this stuff. And when I came back with the proof saying, no, I'm not, then they finally started listening to me and to my son. At that time, my son was 4, my second oldest.
Do you think today's churches know how to handle demonic activity?
They do not take this stuff. At that point in time, they didn't know. And I did question them. I'm like, it says I don't know my Bible 100%, but I have read it. You know, I understand a lot of things in it. I'm like, the Bible claims that there are these things, and why are you telling me there's not? And they told me, well, it's not really real. It's just like a metaphor. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's what really deterred me a lot from going to get help from the church anymore. Was that they all were like that. It just wasn't one. They were all like that.
I find that to be astounding because churches deal with the supernatural, God, Christ. Why not address the evil side as clearly defined by Scripture?
And they're very real. I think I've met one minister in my life, a Christian minister, who actually believed in these things and would help people get rid of them. And he actually did it right. He wasn't afraid of them, like so many others. When he came to my home, it's like he knew it was there. You could feel it. I mean, you know, the tension and the anger that was in that house just kind of stood there, looked around, and he was trying to get out of there as fast as he could. But he still wouldn't claim that it was there. Aren't you guys supposed to know this stuff? It's not It's not a fairy tale. This stuff is real.
These pastors have to take it seriously. This is real.
Yes, it is. Extremely. And very frightening when it wants to be.
How did it reach the point where you had to leave the house on Fulton Street?
My husband worked normally second at the time, which was, fine. We're second shift now. We got used to it. And a lot of the times, I know it sounds odd, but if he was home, a lot of the things wouldn't happen. I know that sounds so messed up, but a lot of things wouldn't happen. He is a Christian, and he's very strong in his faith, so I don't know if he went from room to room on his own at one point, but at one time, when he was, when he's home, it just felt so safe and calm. And when he'd leave, it's like that's when things would start coming out. Well, then all of a sudden he ended up having to work third. We're in trouble. Literally, the first night he started working third, that's when stuff started escalating. Instead of just hearing this woman, we are now seeing her. We're getting scratched. We're getting pushed. She's sitting on the edge of our beds talking. I'm not exactly, you'd be asleep, but you knew somebody was there and talking in your ear. Mm-hmm. She'd laugh. Scared the hell out of my kids. I ain't going to lie. It scared the hell out of me, too. She scared one of our dogs literally out the door. He never came back.
What did the female apparition look like? Could you actually see her?
My son and I both did. My 4-year-old son and I got a good look at her one afternoon when he got dropped off by the bus. She looked to be my height. She was in it looked like a blue, grubby robe. That's the only way I can describe it. But it looked like it was tied, but loosely tied. And her hair was literally out, like someone's been electrocuted. That's not how I figured it out, but that's what it looked like. And her eyes just had this crazed look, like if you've been in solitary for 10 years without talking to anybody, just that crazed, eyes going everywhere look. And her mouth was constantly open, not saying anything, but open, like an O thing. As quick as she'd flash herself, and that's how she always can be. She'd flash, kind of flicker like a light bulb, stay there for a moment, and then she'd flicker right out. And I know she was old. She had to have been. The way the voice, because she wrinkles there, basically, but it was just kind of stooped over.
I recall previously you telling me as you were moving out of this home, you heard laughing from the vicinity or perhaps others?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It was mainly her. Well, what we did is we brought the kids to the grandma's. I think we were grabbing the last load, my husband. We were standing literally in the dining room. It was a dining room, living room combination. Mm-hmm. We're standing there looking around, and he's like, well, what do you think? You think we got everything? I'm like, I think so. I said, one big sweep, one quick look, and I think make sure we got everything, and we're finally done. And she just let out a cackle. It was like right beside us. You know what? If we have anything left, let the landlord have it, and we just left.
After you left the Fulton Street house, did any of these entities follow you to your new home?
Just what he called himself was Apollyon. Only he did. He followed.
The Shadow Man?
Correct.
So he came back. What happened next?
We lived in Spring Lake for about 8 years. Himself was more attached to my son, who was at that point, 5 and now, growing up. I really didn't have to deal with him a whole lot. Not my son, but the man, the thing. I saw him, the big mass, but he was more interacting with my son at that point. So, okay, that's good. He has something protecting him. I didn't know at that point, I still, idiot as I am, did not catch fully aware of what was really going on and what this thing really was. And there were walkthroughs from that house. There was a lot of animal spirits that we saw in that house. I remember the address number, but it was savage. It's right across the street from the dentist office, the library. There was not a whole lot going on there. It's when we moved to Muskegon, Norton Shores, that's when everything really blew up in our faces.
The Shadow Man followed you to your Muskegon residence.
Yeah, it was just him. We'd have walkthroughs everywhere we go. People would say that, well, they're attracted to my son and myself because they know we can hear and see them.
You're sensitive.
Yes, I have been since I've been born, so is my 2 older sons. My second oldest was he didn't deal with it very well at that small age, which I totally understand, and I did honestly think that, okay, this thing has been in my life since I was 13. He's never done anything horrible to me. This guy can protect my kid when I can't. He can see what I can't. Some things I can't see, That's what I thought. We moved to Madison, Grand Haven. about a year or two, we moved to Muskegon. Oh, I should say, the big thing that I guess pissed him off, that entity, my older son, now at that time was 19, and he got into Hinduism for a couple of years. Him and I were getting our relationship back in order, personal stuff. But anyway, my oldest and I were talking one day. He goes, Mom, he's not a ghost. He never was. He goes, this thing is a demon. And at one point I did not believe him. But, you know, after a few months of paying attention and seeing how this thing is interacting, not just with my son now, but it's starting to physically try to hurt my other children. So my eldest son played a mantra, a Hindu mantra at one point, and forced him to leave the home.
So that's how you rid yourself of this shadow man.
Yep, that's what I thought. And then we moved to Muskegon, and he came back with a vengeance. Literally the day we moved in. I can't even explain the pounding. It's like someone took the back of their heel and just slammed it on the floor. It shook the house. It was horrid. The doorbells were starting to ring. I mean, it didn't just start light. It came back with a vengeance. And he was very angry. I never had time to even bless the house, let alone we were still moving in.
Did you ever rid yourself or your family of this demonic entity?
Honestly, I haven't. Trust me, I've been trying, but everything I've tried, he'll go away for about a week or two, or I might get him to where he's a little bit more weak, but with it, he always pops back up. And it always comes with a certain smell and heat.
Have you reached out to other pastors to rid this demon from your life?
Yes, I have. Not just locally here in Grand Haven, but I have reached out to a couple of churches in Muskegon and Grand Rapids, and they wouldn't even talk to me. They wouldn't even let me come in and explain what was going on.
They're not going to help you?
No, they're not. I figured that out. Yes, I did try many times, but I finally said, you know what? I don't think these people are going to help me. Who actually ended up helping me and continues to help as much as they can are the Hindus. My eldest son right now is studying to be a Hindu priest, so he's definitely been a help. He seems, this shadow guy, he seems to respond to it. As soon as you play a mantra, it's like he runs for the hills. It's just, unfortunately, he comes back eventually. I'm not sure how to just get rid of him. He just won't go away forever.
Incredible.
In fact, last night we got some activity here. And now I'm back in Grand Haven now. But yeah, poundings, door slamming, you know, I can't just say that was him. There's a couple things here when we moved in. But finally, it's like, you know, this is getting old. I just had a new baby about 4 months ago, and he's definitely scared him a couple of times. I'm at my wit's end. I'm getting there. I don't want another child bothered by this guy.
Pastors need to address this, I believe. The demonic side of the supernatural is real. I really don't get this.
Exactly. And I just get so confused by that. Like, how can you preach it and then say it doesn't exist? It makes you very angry. You just don't know. I mean, so what we do is we play a lot of Hindu mantras. We do smudge. I'm half Native American. I'm from the Little River Band, so my kids are quarters. So we try to mix in the Hindus with Hindu stuff with some of the Native American, and we just try to keep them at bay. That's really all we can do. Keep them at bay and block and ground and just do what you can. But that's where I originally got them from, was the Satanic Bible, and there's also by Anton LaVey. And there was another one that he wrote, I want to say it was Satanic Rituals and Rites, but I can't remember it exactly for what it is, but I do remember those two especially. That's where I got them from.
Well, I certainly hope you have freedom from this sometime soon, and I'll keep you in my prayers.
Thank you very much.